In the quiet glow of a forgotten space colony, an elderly botanist opens her greenhouse door to find a tiny, shimmering creature curled among the fallen petals. Its scales glimmer like starlight trapped in glass. But as she gently reaches out, a chilling shadow moves beyond the garden walls. Unseen eyes are watching, and they will stop at nothing to take the creature back. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video, and tell us where are you watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. In a small kitchen on New Peregrine Colony, Agnes Marlowe's hand shook as she lifted her teacup. A tiny shadow drifted past the window. Then there came a gentle clatter, a wobble of spoon against porcelain, and a breath of warm steam that fogged her spectacles. She blinked, wiped the lenses on her sleeve, and found herself staring at a creature no wider than a pie plate, its scales a soft turquoise that brightened where the light touched. The little one chirped, a sound halfway between a hiccup and a bell. Agnes, who had tended soil on 3 worlds and never once found it boring, lowered her cup. "Hello then," she said, voice slow and steady, the way one speaks to a nervous cat. "You've had a strange day, it seems." A hum pressed gently at the edges of her thoughts. It was not a word, not a picture, but an impression like a single string plucked in a dark room. Alone, cold, hopeful. Agnes's jaw loosened. "Oh, my dear," she whispered, "you can talk without saying a thing." The dragonlet crept closer. Its wings were thin, like watercolor held up to a lamp. Agnes rummaged in her cool box, found a slice of synth salmon, and offered a corner. The creature ate with quiet focus, then shuffled up the sleeve of her sweater and curled into the warm hollow of her shoulder. The pressure in her mind shifted. Safe, trying, grateful. Agnes reached for her old comm tablet. The emergency icon glowed. She thought of rules, forms, and the soft, tugging plea against her bones. She remembered the quiet after her partner, Niall, had gone, how the house had learned new echoes. She set the tablet down. "We'll make a plan first," she said. "We are not in a hurry to be misunderstood." A double chime sounded at her front door. 2 silhouettes stood on the cam, a tall figure in a light-absorbing suit and another with the stance of a boulder. The tall one smiled without showing teeth. "Good morning," he said through the speaker. "Auric Vane, Private Compliance. My associate, Mara Kelt. We're tracing a biosafety breach. We have authorization to conduct a short scan." Ripple, the name arrived in Agnes's mind the way a pebble becomes a circle across water, tightened against her neck. Fear. Hide. Agnes smiled, mild and helpful. "Of course," she said. "Do hold up your documents. I am old, but these eyes still read small print." The paper flashed too fast to parse. Agnes tapped a hidden alert. The button Jules had installed after a false fire drill last year. Her grandson kept procedures like a garden keeps fences, not meant to be pretty, meant to be there. "I can have colonial security on speaker in a moment," Agnes said. "My Jules works there. He's awfully fond of rules." A pause, a tiny stiffening in the tall man's shoulders. "That won't be necessary," Auric Vane replied. "We'll return later." They withdrew with a look that searched every shadow. Agnes waited for her breath to slow, then lifted Ripple from her shoulder. He was cool against her palms, like river stone that remembers sunlight. "You are not a smuggled box or a stray parcel," she murmured. "You are a someone. Until we know who can be trusted, we keep you right here." The hum against her thoughts loosened with relief. She cleaned the counter, brewed new tea, and set out a laundry basket lined with a soft scarf. Ripple crawled in, as if he had always known the way. Agnes studied the little face, the bright eyes, the silk-thin wings. "I don't know what you are yet," she said, "but I do know this. The world will try to name you property if we let it. The house felt different, as if the walls had leaned in to listen. Agnes made a list in her head. Food, heat, quiet roots, one friend who could keep a secret, one door that opened where no one thought to knock. Outside, morning lights brightened across the dome. Inside, a new story caught fire. The door chime did not ring again, but Agnes kept hearing it in memory, a polite sound that had carried a warning. She placed her hand over the basket, just above Ripple's steady breath, and promised the room in a low voice, "We will do this carefully, and we will do it right." The hum in her mind answered gentle and sure, "Together." And that was the moment the hook found its hold, not in spectacle, but in a quiet kitchen where a brave decision was made and the next knock might arrive at any second. Agnes moved like a gardener in winter, slowly, with purpose. She took the oldest tablet from her desk, the one with a login that belonged to another century, and said in a firm tone, "System, open Xenobiology Gateway, credentials Marlowe Beta 72. The screen welcomed her with a dusty smile. She searched for small draconic organism, turquoise, empathic, and found a lot of nothing dressed as maybe. She shifted strategy. Point. High-value bio-life, therapy-adjacent empathy carriers, private catalog rumors. A list of articles surfaced. A blurred image appeared of a creature like Ripple, larger and caged in a field of pale light. The caption mentioned skyloom drakes and emotion-forward neural arrays. It also mentioned Solace Dynamics, a consortium with more lawyers than plants. Ripple peered at the screen and sent a tight chord of feelings. Recognition, ache, a shape like a circle missing a piece. Family, Agnes guessed, and the word tasted like sweetness and salt together. A soft rattle came from the window. Tomoko Hyde, the neighbor teen who knew every shortcut in the residential ring, pressed her nose to the glass. "Miss Marlowe," she whispered, "do you have my grandma's seed tins? She says I left them." Her eyes widened at the sight of the basket's small occupant. "Oh, stars, that is not a lizard." "Tomoko," Agnes said, calm as the moon, "you are seeing something rare, and there are people who want it for the wrong reasons. Can you be quiet as breath?" The girl swallowed, nodded, and climbed through the side latch. Ripple studied her, then inched forward and touched her knuckle with a careful claw. Tomoko gasped. "I felt something, like a hello." She looked back at Agnes. "He said hello, right? Or my brain did a weird?" "Both," Agnes said. "I need a favor, Doctor. Briar Nolan owes me 3 cups of tea and a rescue from a bad conference panel. Her lab sits near the back corridors. No comms. Paper only. Can you get a note to her hand?" Tomoko beamed. "Paper is invisible if you're looking for signals. My favorite kind of sneaky." She tucked the folded message into the inside pocket of her hooded jacket. "I'll go now. And Miss Marlowe, I won't say a syllable, not even to myself." After Tomoko slipped out, Agnes began to test Ripple's talents. She placed 3 objects on the table. A teacup, a wooden spoon, and a small stone from her first garden on Earth. "Which one feels like home to me?" she asked, thinking of rain on soil. Ripple went straight to the stone, set a claw upon it, and sent a soft warmth that made her eyes sting. "You are very good at this," Agnes murmured, "and very polite, which counts more than degree papers." The emergency device on the wall clicked once. Not an alarm, a handshake from a friend. Agnes pressed the hidden button. "Briar? Agnes," came the low reply. "Your note made my day more interesting than intended. Do you truly have what I think you have?" "He calls himself Ripple, or I call him that, and he accepts me," Agnes said. "He is small, thoughtful, and in trouble," Briar exhaled. "Solace Dynamics has been buying silence with bright grants. I can't prove it, but I can prove a mind when I meet one. The back corridors still live. The old field lab in Habitat Sector 9 should open to my badge. Meet me there in 2 hours. Avoid cameras. If you run into uniforms, assume some of them are borrowed. Agnes looked at Ripple. He looked back and sent a feeling like a path through shadows. We will be careful, she said. And Briar, thank you. Bring a coat and water, Briar said. The lab's heating is a rumor. Agnes packed as if leaving for a slow storm. She took a small carrier with soft lining, her favorite cardigan that did not look like someone who runs, and the maintenance keycard Niall had kept behind the bookshelf in a tin of old screws. Ripple slid into the carrier with a trusting sigh. Agnes tied her shoes, which felt like putting on a song from a forgotten summer. A heavy knock sounded at the front door, and an electronic chirp at the back, the kind that tries to sound friendly and does not. Ripple's hum sharpened. Danger. Hide. Now. Agnes opened the rear garden door, slipped into the narrow lane of hydroponic towers, and moved faster than she had in years. Footsteps echoed in her home. A voice called her name in a practiced tone. Mrs. Marlowe, we need to check your air seals. The voice belonged to Mara Kelt this time, flat and steady. Agnes found the utility hatch between 2 water lines. The keycard sighed through the lock. Cool air kissed her face from the tunnel beyond. She closed the hatch and rested her palms against it while her heart made drums. We keep going, she whispered to Ripple. I am old, but I am not done. Ripple answered with a ribbon of courage that lit her lungs with steadier breath. Agnes followed faded arrows through the maintenance corridors. The dome's hum sounded like faraway bees. She thought of Jules, of how he'd scold gently and then help anyway. She thought of paperwork and gentle lies, and how a small life could teach a large world to change its mind. One corridor turned to another. The scent of dust and copper led them toward the dark shape of the old lab door. Behind Agnes, the world she had known carried on. Sprinklers singing over tomato vines, deliveries buzzing like sleepy flies. Ahead, a door waited, with history pressed into its hinges. Agnes tapped the panel. The lock light flickered. She held the card to it again, and the door slid open with a sound like an old book taking a breath. Dr. Briar Nolan stood inside the dim lab with a scarf around her neck and curiosity bright in her eyes. You brought a miracle, she said softly, as Agnes set the carrier on a metal table. Ripple poked his head out, blinking at the quiet machines. Be gentle with your cleverness, Agnes said, half to Briar and half to herself. We need proof, not a circus. Briar lifted a scanner that had known better days. A pale beam painted Ripple's small frame with light. On the display, his neural map unfurled like a constellation. Look at that lattice, Briar whispered. Distributed nodes in the spinal web, optimized for receiving and sending states. It's not just empathy, it's a language foundation. Ripple projected a thread of feelings to both women at once. Curiosity, hello, not a pet. Briar flinched at the surprise of understanding, then laughed in delight. Not a pet, she agreed, eyes wet. You are a person, little shade. The lab's wall console pinged. Not friendly. Briar checked a side screen. Someone's trying old credentials against this sector, she said. They shouldn't be able to find a decommissioned corridor unless the map in their pocket is newer than ours. The lights flickered. We need to go. Go where? Agnes asked. When the hallway is a mouth and we are a snack? There's a research pod in the service bay, Briar said. Short range, meant for weather sampling. It can reach Outpost Halcyon in under an hour if the engines remember how. Then she began flipping switches in a rhythm that only people who love their work use. Systems hummed with reluctant life. Agnes settled Ripple inside the pod's small cabin and buckled herself in with hands that had fastened seed trays on shaky transports. Alarms grumbled from somewhere unhelpful. The service bay doors shuddered. Distant voices skated through the corridor like flat stones. "Launch," Breyer said, as if the pod were a nervous horse. "Up and kind, my dear." The pod jerked, groaned, and slid free into open black. Agnes felt the push in her spine and the lift in her throat. The colony's domes shrank into lit pearls against velvet. For a moment, peace held. Then a pinprick of motion appeared on the scanner, growing like a thought that will not be quiet. "Solace Interceptor," Breyer said. "Fast. They've tagged us." "We can't outrun them," Agnes said. "We can only be something else." Ripple pulled himself onto the control panel. Small claws, careful not to scratch. His scales shifted from blue-green to a pale glow, like sea glass catching dawn. An ache rolled through Agnes's mind, vast and tender. She felt the shape of a field forming, not built with metal, but called from a deeper grammar. "Breyer," Agnes whispered, "what is he doing?" "Something ships pretend they invented," Breyer said, eyes wide. "He's gathering the room between rooms. Space bent, not like melting, but like an idea deciding to become." And the stars smeared and then snapped into a new map. The scanner spun, sulked, and then announced nothing with confidence. Outside the viewport, a soft river of light threaded through a nebula that glowed the color of hidden violets. Forms moved within that river, long, luminous bodies that caught starlight and gave it back with their own pattern. They were larger than Ripple by magnitudes, wings unfurling like sails woven from rain. They swam the vacuum as if it were warm water. Ripple slumped, tired to the bone that thoughts use. Agnes cradled him in her hands, murmuring nonsense that meant everything. The largest of the elders drew near, eyes old as patience, and sent a chord that held more grammar than any dictionary. Welcome, gratitude, warning. Breyer's fingers raced over the console. "I'm recording," she said. "Every pulse, every pattern. We need the world to see this, not a boardroom. Solace won't argue with silence. They'll argue with light." The scanner lit with new signatures. Ships again, too many, arrowing toward the river of drakes. "They came fast," Agnes said. "Fast is not always kind." "We transmit now," Breyer said, linking channels to the Stellar Conservancy and public feeds alike. Raw data, clear visuals, sent in parallel. This is a sentient species with complex communication and community. Any harm is a violation under interstellar accords. Her hands did not tremble. They only moved. The Solace ship spread like a net. The elders gathered in a gentle spiral, weaving the space between them with a shared shimmer. A wave moved out from their circle, not a strike, not a wall, but a reminder to the universe of how much it can hold. Ripple stirred in Agnes's palms and sent 4 notes into her bones. Here, family, danger, help. Agnes nodded. "We hear you," she said, "and we are not the only ones." A new ping sounded on the pod's narrow band, followed by a calm voice that carried the warm weight of authority. "Research Pod 7 Kappa. This is Captain Arden of the Stellar Conservancy Patrol. We have your broadcast. Hold position. We are on approach." Agnes let out a breath she did not know she had saved, and felt the pod steady itself as if standing still were a skill learned by practice. The Conservancy ships arrived like small moons. positioning themselves between the solace net and the living spiral of Skyloom. Scientists asking to assist, teachers requesting permission to share, ordinary viewers typing messages full of wonder and simple good sense. In a world that sometimes forgot its heart, the heart had found a microphone. Auric Vane's tight voice cut across a private hail. Pod 7 Kappa, power down and prepare for inspection. Your craft contains proprietary material. Agnes answered in a tone one might use for a slippery salesman at a garden fair. Hello, Mr. Vane. I am looking at a community of persons, not products. If you wish to speak further, please try the public channel, where everyone else is listening. There was a pause, the kind that happens when a plan meets a broom. Mara Kelt spoke next, softer. Stand by. Captain Arden's voice overlaid the static, firm and even. Solace units, you are within recorded range of a recognized sentient community. Disengage. Failure to do so will be noted as a breach. The drakes sang, not with sound, but with light and thought. Their spiral widened and lifted like a lantern rising. The wave they cast was not force, it was balance. The Solace ships drifted back a measure, lines slackening as if uncertainty had put pebbles in their shoes. Ripple wriggled free of Agnes's hands and pressed both small paws to the glass. The elder nearest the pod turned one bright eye toward him, and a complicated melody of feeling moved through every witness at once. Family recovered, loss remembered, future defended. Briar whispered, I am still sending. Her cheeks were wet and she did not seem to mind. Paperwork sprouted fast after that, the way vines jump when rain finally comes. The Conservancy escorted the drakes to a safer route along the nebula. Solace Dynamics received notices with the weight of planets attached. On 3 worlds, a few quiet arrests followed on charges that had nothing to do with empathy and everything to do with fraud. Ripple lingered by the glass for a time. He sent Agnes a string of feelings that felt like wrapping a shawl around someone's shoulders. Goodbye for now. Learning to be. Return when sky is kind. Agnes pressed her palm to the window and matched her breath to his. It felt like a small ritual, or maybe the first page of a book. Go on, she said. They're waiting, and so am I, in a way. The airlock cycled with a gentle kiss of pressure. Ripple slipped into the bright dark and joined the spiral. The elders altered their pattern to include him. The river of light curved, thinner than a whisper, and then was gone. 3 months passed. Agnes's greenhouse was a place of peace and small miracles. Strawberries that refused to listen to the calendar. Dill that finally behaved. Tomatoes with opinions. The news held headlines about Skyloom protections enacted and Conservancy oversight expanded, and about an executive at Solace who resigned to seek quiet work in a garden. Auric Vane and Mara Kelt did not appear in stories for a while. Perhaps they were writing letters to apologize, or perhaps they were studying a new trade that did not require chasing children of the stars. Children visited Agnes's plot with questions she liked to answer. Outside the glass hovered a figure that pulsed with a memory she could feel in her teeth. Turquoise scales deeper now, wings broad, patterns bright like handwriting. Ripple had grown, but the tilt of his head was the same, and the shape of his gaze as his eyes met hers felt like someone saying your name correctly after a while apart. Agnes lifted a hand to the pane. Ripple placed his clawed paw against the same spot. Breath fogged the glass on both sides in small half-moons that tried to match. They stood there, old woman and not-so-small Skyloom, breathing together in a rhythm that needed no translation. Ripple sent a gentle flow of images, the elders gliding through currents, new songs shared, a corridor of safe routes drawn like bright thread across the dark. He sent another, smaller picture, a kitchen with a kettle, a basket lined with a scarf, hands that shook and then steadied. Agnes laughed softly, a sound with room in it. Yes, she said, that was a good day. They stayed for a while, exchanging quiet, simple things. How the strawberries were stubborn, how the nebula smelled like the first second after rain, even though there is no rain in space. How a promise kept is a door that stays on its hinges. When Ripple pushed away into the night, he traced a little loop in the air, something like a signature. Agnes watched until the light folded into the larger light, and then she returned to her tomatoes, humming a tune that had not existed that morning. From then on evenings when the dome's fans hummed just right, Agnes would look up and smile for no reason most people could see. But children, who are good at knowing things the way flowers do, sometimes glanced at the same corner of sky and waved. And if you stood quietly at the garden gate, you might hear a whisper that was not a whisper at all, only the world remembering how to listen. The universe is big enough for the names we know, for the ones we are learning, and for the ones who return in kindness when the glass is tapped.